A few years ago, I was standing in front of the mirror after giving what people called a life-changing keynote. I'd gotten a standing ovation, heartfelt emails, even someone crying in the hallway thanking me. And you know what I felt? Not pride, not joy. I felt like a fraud, like I'd tricked everyone into believing I was worth clapping for. Like any minute now, someone would say, okay, the real expert can come out now. Here's the truth we don't say out loud enough. Feeling proud of yourself can be harder than admitting failure. And for many of us, success feels like a setup. We're allowed to celebrate others. But when it comes to ourselves, we deflect, we downplay, we disappear. So why is it so hard to feel proud of ourselves, even when we've earned it, even when the evidence is right there? Let's walk through 5 truths I've uncovered in the research and conversations with thousands of people and in my own wrestle with worthiness. First, pride feels like a risky emotion. Pride is not the same as arrogance, but we've blurred the lines so badly that feeling good about ourselves starts to feel dangerous. We've been told, don't get a big head, stay humble, or my personal favorite, don't be too much. So we shrink, we armor up, and we call it modesty when really it's fear dressed up as virtue. I can't tell you how many times I've sat across from someone who just did something truly hard, whether it was setting a boundary, asking for help, or showing up to something they were terrified of. And when I said, that's incredible, you should feel proud, they winced, literally winced, as if pride was something to be ashamed of. And that reaction, it's more common than you'd think. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us started to believe that pride was unsafe, that being proud of ourselves would make us seem arrogant, full of ourselves, or disconnected from others. We confuse pride with ego. And while unchecked ego can absolutely be harmful, authentic pride, the kind that grows from effort, alignment, and self-awareness, is one of the most life-affirming emotions we can experience. But it's also one of the most vulnerable. Because pride asks us to stand in our own story and say, I did that. Not perfectly, not without fear, but fully. And for people who've spent their lives trying not to take up too much space, pride can feel like a betrayal of who they were taught to be, especially if you were raised in an environment where humility meant invisibility and self-worth had to be earned over and over again. Pride doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels like a violation of an unspoken rule. And so we downplay, we deflect, we soften our language, we laugh it off when someone compliments us. Oh, it was nothing, I just got lucky. Anyone could have done it. Those aren't just polite responses. They're learned behaviors rooted in the fear of being seen too clearly. Because if we let ourselves feel pride, we let others see what matters to us. And that's risky. Because if we care too much and it's taken from us or criticized, well, that kind of vulnerability stings the most. There's also a kind of emotional safety in self-deprecation. If I make the joke first, no one can use it against me. If I pretend I'm not proud, no one can knock me down for being too proud. But here's the catch. When we shield ourselves from the pain of criticism, we also block ourselves from the joy of connection. When we numb the risk, we numb the reward. The irony is, people who own their pride in a grounded, honest way, those are often the most generous, connected, and humble people in the room. Because pride, when it comes from alignment with our values, makes us more empathetic, more open, more likely to lift others up too. It gives us enough internal stability to not need constant external validation. So yes, pride feels risky because it asks us to show up and be seen. But what I've learned over and over is that the risk of not feeling pride, of constantly outsourcing our self-worth, is far greater. We can't live meaningful lives if we don't feel the impact of our own courage. Pride isn't the enemy, disconnection is. Second, shame is a silent blocker. When I ask people to name something they're proud of, they often freeze. Not because they haven't done meaningful things, but because shame interrupts the signal. Shame whispers, "Who do you think you are?" And if that voice has lived in your head long enough, it becomes the narrator of your story. I've seen it again and again in therapy sessions, in research interviews, even in coffee shop conversations. Someone will be talking about something they worked incredibly hard for, something that mattered to them, something they endured or overcame. And just as they start to describe it, their voice gets quiet. They look down. They try to change the subject. Not because they don't care, but because shame has shown up uninvited and taken the wheel. Shame is powerful because it's silent. It doesn't need to shout to control the room. It works in the quiet. It thrives in isolation. And one of its most subtle tactics is this. It convinces us that feeling good about ourselves is dangerous. That if we acknowledge our own growth, our own grit, our own strength, we're setting ourselves up to be judged, or worse, exposed as a fraud. And it's tricky. Shame doesn't always sound like a direct attack. Sometimes it shows up as doubt. Sometimes it sounds like logic. Sure, you did that, but it wasn't that hard. Yeah, but other people have done more. That inner critic doesn't come from nowhere. It often has deep roots, planted in childhood, reinforced by culture, watered by comparison, and over time, we start to confuse that voice with truth. But here's the reality. Shame is a liar. It's not based in fact. It's based in fear. And when it comes to pride, shame shuts the door before we can even reach for the handle. It tells us that to feel proud is to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to be unsafe. The data backs this up. People with high levels of internalized shame struggle significantly more with self-compassion, self-trust, and even basic emotional regulation. When pride tries to rise, shame short-circuits it. It says, not you, not yet, not until you've done more. And that voice, if we don't learn to name it and confront it, becomes the filter we see ourselves through, even in our most beautiful moments. Shame resilience isn't about never feeling shame. It's about recognizing it, talking about it, and walking through it instead of letting it dictate our behavior. It's about asking ourselves, what's the story I'm telling myself right now? And then challenging that story with truth, with compassion, and with a reality check. Because when we don't recognize shame, we end up outsourcing our pride. We wait for someone else to validate us, to give us permission to feel good about who we are. And that's a fragile foundation. It means our sense of worth can be taken away as easily as it was given. What I know for sure is that when we build shame resilience, when we start replacing that critical inner voice with curiosity and kindness, we create space. And in that space, pride can breathe. Pride becomes possible, not the loud, performative kind, the quiet kind, the kind that says, I've been through something, I've done the work, and I'm still here. That matters. That's not arrogance. That's healing. That's truth. And it's a truth worth holding on to. Third, we tie pride to perfection, not progress. We've made pride conditional, like we finally allow ourselves to feel it when we hit some perfect version of success. The body, the income, the relationship, the recognition. But that's not pride. That's a hostage negotiation with ourselves. Real pride comes from progress, not perfection. From knowing I showed up, I stayed in it, I did the hard thing. This is one of the patterns I see the most in people who are driven, compassionate, and exhausted. They've achieved so much. But when you ask, are you proud of yourself? They hesitate. Not because they're unsure of the work they've done, but because they've quietly moved the goalpost. Again and again. It's like, sure, I did that, but it wasn't enough. Or yeah, I finished it, but I could have done it better. Or I'll feel proud when it's all perfect. But perfect never comes. We've been taught that pride should be earned at the finish line, and only if we crossed it with grace and speed, that we're only allowed to feel proud after the thing is done, flawlessly, preferably, and that any earlier acknowledgement is self-indulgent or premature. So instead of letting ourselves feel pride throughout the journey, we withhold it. We ration it out. We dangle it in front of ourselves like a carrot. Just a little farther. Just a little better. That's not motivation, that's emotional starvation. There's a difference between growth and striving. Growth says, I'm evolving. Striving says, I'm still not enough. And what I've found is that people who struggle the most with feeling proud are often the ones who are stuck in this striving loop. They keep raising the bar because they think that if they finally hit the perfect mark, it'll quiet the inner critic. But perfection doesn't silence shame, it fuels it. When pride is based on perfection, it becomes performative. We're not asking ourselves, did I live in alignment with my values? We're asking, did I meet someone else's impossible standard? And the moment we base our self-worth on someone else's invisible scoreboard, we lose every time. But when we root pride in progress, in effort, in showing up when we were tired or scared or overwhelmed, that kind of pride changes us. That pride isn't dependent on outcomes. It's grounded in character, in courage, in integrity. I think about the moments in my own life where I felt the most quietly proud. And they were never the glossy moments. They weren't about applause or approval. They were the small, gritty moments. The mornings I got back up after a hard night. The times I said no when everything in me wanted to say yes, just to please someone. The conversations I didn't want to have but had anyway. That's the kind of pride that sticks. The kind that roots down deep. The world will always celebrate big wins. That's easy. But you've got to learn how to celebrate the in-between, the almost, the still becoming. That's where your power lives. That's where real pride is born. Fourth, many of us were never taught how to celebrate ourselves. Think about it. When were you ever taught how to own your accomplishments without apologizing? For many of us, the answer is never. We were taught how to improve, how to fix, how to strive, but not how to pause and say, I'm proud of me. And so we grow up skilled in hustle, but starved for affirmation. This one hits close to home because I've seen it not only in the research, but in real life, over and over. We grow up in environments that reward achievement, productivity, being helpful, being good. But rarely are we taught how to internally acknowledge ourselves. I mean, really, when's the last time someone sat you down and said, here's how you recognize your own growth. Here's how you celebrate your own courage. Here's how to sit with your own pride without backing away from it. Most of us weren't taught that. We were taught how to get the gold star, how to make others proud, how to earn love by staying small, quiet, or impressive. But internal pride, that had no blueprint. And in the absence of that blueprint, we learn to measure our worth by external cues, grades, likes, promotions, praise. So when those external cues are missing, or even when they are there, it still doesn't feel like enough because we never learned how to feel it for ourselves. And that's what I mean by emotional starvation. You can be surrounded by success and still feel emotionally empty if you've never learned how to witness your own growth, to name it, to sit with it and say, this matters. I matter. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't about blame. Our caregivers and communities did the best they could with what they had. Most of them weren't taught how to celebrate themselves either. This kind of emotional literacy isn't just personal, it's generational. We inherit beliefs about pride, about worthiness, about what it means to be good or humble, and we carry them in our bodies long before we ever question them. So we become adults who are amazing at checking boxes, hitting milestones, keeping the plate spinning, but who flinch when someone says you should be proud of yourself. And I want you to know that's not a character flaw, that's a missing skill set. And like any skill, it can be learned. It's not too late to build that muscle. It starts small. It starts with noticing, with taking a breath after something difficult, and instead of moving on to the next task, saying, that took something out of me and I showed up anyway. It starts with allowing yourself to feel good about the fact that you kept a promise to yourself. or set a boundary, or spoke the truth, even when your voice shook. You don't need confetti or a big announcement. You just need to recognize your own effort and name your own growth. That might sound simple, but it's one of the most radical things we can do. Because when you start learning how to celebrate yourself from the inside out, you stop waiting for the world to tell you who you are. You begin to know it for yourself. And that knowing, that's where real confidence is born. Fifth, pride requires presence, and presence is hard. Pride doesn't live in the past or the future. It lives in the now. But most of us live 5 steps ahead. We say, I'll feel proud when I finish this project, lose the weight, fix the mess. But pride asks something braver. Can you feel worthy right here in this messy, unfinished, beautifully imperfect moment? That's the work. Here's what I've come to understand. The more disconnected we are from the present moment, the harder it is to access real, grounded pride. Not the kind of pride that's based on a perfect result, but the kind that's rooted in how we showed up. And showing up is always happening right now, not later, not someday, but here. But being present is no small thing. It sounds simple, but it's profoundly uncomfortable for many of us. Because when we get still, when we slow down enough to actually be where we are, all the feelings we've been outrunning start to catch up. Disappointment, grief, shame, doubt, it all bubbles up in that quiet space. And so we stay busy, we keep moving, we plan the next goal, the next fix, the next performance. Presence takes courage. It's much easier to keep striving than it is to stand still and say, this is enough, I'm enough. It takes practice to feel at home in the moment we're in, especially when it doesn't look like the version of success we imagined. And that's why pride can be so elusive. Because it doesn't shout, it doesn't compete. It waits quietly for us to stop, to notice, to feel. Pride isn't just a reaction, it's a recognition. And recognition takes presence. When I think about the moments I've truly felt proud, not performatively, but deeply, it's never been in a big public win. It's been in a breath. After a conversation I didn't want to have, in the car, driving home from something that took every ounce of courage I had, in the quiet space after a hard decision. Those moments don't announce themselves. You have to be in them to catch them. And yet most of us are never in them. We're already on to the next thing, already rewriting the to-do list, already questioning whether we did it well enough. We don't build space for pride because we're constantly trying to outrun our own imperfection. But here's the thing. The present moment is the only place where pride lives. You won't find it in the memory of who you used to be or in the fantasy of who you might become. You find it in the breath you take right now. As you realize, I'm showing up. I'm still trying. I'm doing the work. And yes, that moment might be messy. It might be uncertain. It might be incomplete, but it's yours and it's sacred. And if you can meet yourself there without judgment, without rushing, you just might feel the weight of your own worth settle into your chest like truth. That's pride, not perfection, not applause, presence. So if you've ever wondered why it's so hard to feel proud of yourself, even when the evidence is right there, even when people around you are cheering, it's not because you're ungrateful or broken or just too modest. It's because you've been carrying messages for years that told you pride is dangerous, shame is safer, perfection is required, and celebration is earned only at the finish line. But those messages, they are outdated. They were never built to honor your humanity. Pride is not the problem, disconnection is. And the path back to ourselves, the real grounded soul level knowing that we are worthy of being proud, is built moment by moment. by replacing judgment with self-respect, by honoring effort over outcomes, by allowing pride to live where it was always meant to, in the quiet courage of showing up and staying true to who you are. You don't need permission. You don't need a polished ending. You don't need to wait until everything's perfect. You're allowed to feel proud right now, in the middle, in the mess, in the trying. Because pride, real pride, isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being fully you. And that's worth celebrating every single day. Good luck. And may you always remember, you don't have to earn your worth. You just have to stop running from it.